Welcome to the Central Pennsylvania Music Podcast. Tonight, Bill Trousdale and Phil Schwartz and Nate Myers. This episode is sponsored by Members First. And now your hosts, Daniel Kime and Alan McCutcheon.
Welcome to the Central Pennsylvania Music Podcast. I'm your host, Daniel. Coming up, we have Bill Trousdale and Nate Myers of Nate Myers and the Aces. We're sitting here with Bill Trousdale. Bill, thank you so much for coming on the show. I really appreciate you coming out here for it. You have a extensive background in music, especially radio. Is that correct?
Yeah, that's true enough.
I guess the best way to do this with your history and your experience, let's start at the beginning. Where did all this start for you?
Well, short form, born in Philly, lived most of my life in Ohio, went to school in Dallas, Texas for a bit, and then went to Susquehanna University, took a job in radio in Towanda, Pennsylvania, worked at WSUS in North Jersey, then went to Elmira, New York, worked at 2 different radio stations. Finally, I get to Lancaster, Pennsylvania, worked for a radio station there in 1977. And then I went across the river and I worked at WSBA, and then up the river I went to WKBO. And I would think most people would know me from my WKBO days on air.
Okay.
After that, briefly, I went in partnership with a native son by the name of Kenny Chandler. He was a 1959 graduate of John Harris. He found some national success in New York City, was on some soap operas, did some voiceovers for national companies like Carnation Instant Breakfast Drink. He also did work out in California for Yahoo. He was the white-faced troubadour for CBS television in season 1973, I believe, where he went all across the United States and sang this song for CBS, introducing their new season. So he and I were partners for a bit, producing jingles in central Pennsylvania. Did that for 2 years, and as a result, started to get to know some of the people in the studios that were around the area. After a couple of years, Kenny, being the talent that he was, got impatient, thought the jingle business should be moving along quicker in central Pennsylvania than what it was. He went back to California, and that's when, since I had already left radio broadcasting, started looking into radio sales.
Okay.
And I got a gig at WMSP, which was Market Square Presbyterian Church, and they play classical music. I was their general sales manager and did that for several years. The station was 50,000 watts, but was operating at more like 3,000 watts because the church didn't have the money to put into the signal. So the church eventually sold it. They sold it to Barnstable Broadcasting, which evolved from mix to oldies, or cool 94.9. 94.9 became Bob. And I stayed with the oldies when they moved oldies from 94.9 to 99.3. Then the deregulation thing started coming in hot and heavy in regard to radio. And I just wasn't really, I was more a ma and pa radio kind of guy. Mm-hmm. So the corporate think that was involved was not necessarily my forte. So I went back to York and I worked for oldies station down there, 96.1. And that was Brill Media, Moffett Media out of Red Lion. And then they got sold to Susquehanna Broadcasting, and then Susquehanna Broadcasting sold it to another C company. Here we go. So again, corporate think started entering into my life. Decided it was probably best that I leave, so I took a job up in Lewistown and worked for WKVA, which was kind of the heritage radio station up there.
Okay.
And then came back to Harrisburg and attempted to get back into radio. And something about a 50-year-old some person, didn't seem to be a lot of room in the inn for somebody of that age to get back into radio and either broadcast or sales. So I ended up selling furniture. Yeah, that was okay.
Hand in hand.
Yeah, for a while. I knew that I sold those guys, so they knew me, I knew them, so that worked fine. And then I worked for the Brenner Boys at Ashley Furniture. Then I went to Wolf Furniture. Then I started selling for phone solicitation, as we talked briefly.
Oh, yep.
Yeah, at Bath Fitter. And then I went to Trogs, and then I thought, okay, it's time to retire. So I did.
Nice.
So that's in a nutshell. Some of the things I did at KBO that might be memorable. That's totally up to your audience and who actually is listening. But I did a feature called the KBO Kids, where I actually went out remotely and recorded kids in elementary school, and I asked them pertinent questions like, what does a proctologist do? And just waited for their answers to be cute and clever, like kids say the darndest thing.
Yeah.
And they did, without question. Or what was the last thing your mom told you couldn't buy? That was a CD tape. It had a lady's boob on it. No, can't buy that. So that was fun, and it was entertaining. And it was maybe, for that time period, a touch controversial. But it wasn't anything that was crude. But it was entertaining, because kids do say the darndest things.
That's right.
I did a thing called Trousdale Trivia. One of the questions I asked was, let's see, Bob Angelucci, Chuck Rhodes, and 8 others. What is the answer to that question? It would be 10 drummers drumming. That was the trivia question. So Bob Angelucci was the drummer of the Magnificent Men. Mm-hmm. You had to know that, or else it doesn't make any sense. And Chuck Rhodes was a TV broadcaster for TV 27, weatherman, and he also was a drummer. So if you knew Bob Angelucci and Chuck Rhodes were drummers, you could figure out the answer to the question. But that was always fun. I was involved in the naming of the Pride of the Susquehanna, in that I coordinated the media in the area, newspaper and radio, to submit a name from their audience to come up with a name for the pending riverboat that was coming down the road, or down the river. And eventually it went to the committee and at the Pride of the Susquehanna, and they came up with the name. They had the Rambler, and they had all sorts of different names that were submitted.
Yeah.
But that was fun, because it was, I felt a little unusual to get media to get coordinated to do anything together, because usually it's so highly competitive amongst each other. Well, I don't want to do something that somebody else is doing. I want to do it all by myself.
Yeah, exactly. How so, media goes,
I also produced and got involved with some of the MDA stuff. We did a show in Pembroke, and then it went out to Colonial Park Mall, and we did some shows there with R.J. Harris of WHP. I also produced a local radio show on Sunday mornings called the Harrisburg Hall of Fame, where I brought in talents primarily of previous years. I interviewed the Magnificent Men, the El Dantes, and various groups, the Emperors, who are now members of the Central Pennsylvania Music Hall of Fame.
Yeah.
So I have all those tapes, and I'm looking someday to be able to transcribe them from reel to reel and get them in the format that other people can listen to them again.
That'd be awesome. So you were kind of doing what we're doing now, just on radio back then.
Yeah, I guess you might say that.
That's awesome, man.
Yeah. As I mentioned, I worked in Lancaster and York and Harrisburg on air and in sales. And of course, I was fortunate enough in those areas that I was able to interview bands not only on air but also on stage. I was invited to welcome Muhammad Ali to Lancaster for, I think it was MDA cause that he was brought into town to do.
Okay.
And that was fun. I mean, I got all dressed up in a white suit, and he showed up, and he's talking, and he's looking at me, and he walks over and grabs my lapel and looks at me, and he looks at the audience, and he said, "Damn, I didn't know white boys could dress that good." Then he did the routine of, do you want to see the fastest punch in the world? Cautiously, I said, "Sure." And then he said, "Do you want to see it again?"
That old one.
Yeah, classic Muhammad Ali.
Was it a little intimidating getting to meet him and interview him?
It was. It was a little nerve-wracking, but a gentleman beyond belief. Just a phenomenal human being. And again, maybe a person who got a bad rap, just like we were talking about earlier about Pete Rose. How, he got slapped with all sorts of being a bad boy because he gambled, and then now look at where we are now with gambling as prominent as it is.
Gamble on anything these days, anywhere you want.
Sitting down and talking to Brenda Lee and the Statler brothers when I was in New Jersey, Ronnie Millsap. So all these guys, that's a full life when you get to meet and greet and talk and be with people of national significance. And it becomes even more interesting when you find locals who have done the same, who are either a part of or a background of some of these famous people. There's a book that I just found out about, a guy by the name of Bill Huber. You may want to write this down, folks. He wrote a book about George Westinghouse. Now, George Westinghouse was the guy who came about creating the technology necessary to create KDKA radio in Pittsburgh.
Okay.
And one of the employees of Westinghouse was the guy by the name of Conrad. And he came up with all the different technologies necessary for radio to be successful and to be a commercial broadcast station like KDKA. And it's a place called Conrad's Garage that he did all this. Now, allegedly, pieces of that garage have been saved and are somewhere stored in Pittsburgh, which would be just a thrill to me to be able to find out where that is and rebuild that garage and rebuild it to the historical significance that it was at the time that Conrad was doing his work in that garage.
That would be so cool.
Yeah. As a result of KDKA being a 50,000 watt clear channel monster, some of the earliest, one of the earliest DJs was a guy by the name of Reggie Cordy. And when he was on the air, he had a fictitious beer that he would talk about called Old Frothing Slosh. And he'd talk about this product like it was like a real product.
Like he'd give it like an ad read, basically?
Yeah, it was like a real thing. I mean, it was brewed from hippity hops, nice rice, and mad malt. And it's neurologically inspected. Brewed at Upper Credidy on the Thames by appointment to Sir Reginald V and H.M. Reggie Cordick. He's the disc jockey. So it was called Pale Stale Ale. He talked about it so much, and actually his ratings were like out of the roof. He had like 85% of all radios were turned to his radio show at one time or another. And he talked about it so much that eventually there was a brewing company in Pittsburgh that brewed Old Frothing Slosh beer. And the trick of it was, when they brewed it, they bottled it so that the froth would be on top, so it was on the bottom. So the bottles were upside down. So when you picked up the case, the froth would be on the top. So that's why it was Old Frothing Slosh, because the froth of the beer was on the top of it because the can was upside down.
Oh my God, so they put their work into this one to make it accurate.
Really, and it's a clear indication how radio directly influenced commerce.
Yeah. Especially
Especially in Pittsburgh, who, heaven knows, they like to drink out there.
That's for sure.
Yeah, and we're doing the best we can to carry on that tradition here. And it was in 1955 that beer came into place.
Do you know if anyone's making it now, or is that?
I don't think they are, but inserting the bottles and cans upside down in the case so that the froth would be on the top. So they have a historical plaque acknowledging KDKA as the first commercial broadcasting station. More information, take notes, are available at the Heinz History Center. And then locally, there was a guy by the name of Tim Portzline who wrote a book, which is fascinating. I was involved with him for a period of time about Pennsylvania broadcasting. in Harrisburg in particular, that the first radio station was WBAK in Harrisburg.
That was the first radio station ever in Harrisburg.
Yeah, in 1922.
Wow.
It was owned by the state police. By 1925, 3 more stations were added. By 1953, Harrisburg had 2 television stations, WHP-TV and WTPA-TV. KBO, which is where I got my start, was the top 40 leader in the 70s. And later on, WFEC started battling with them, actually maybe a little bit before that. But some of the disc jockeys there acquired phenomenal ratings. On WFEC, there was a guy by the name of Kurt Whitcomb who had the highest ranked show in the evening of any radio station in the United States. Kurt has passed, but he did a heck of a job. He also had many a disc jockey that came from other stations in the area that also worked at FEC. He had Tony Montgomery. It was interesting. He started in Lancaster at WLAN. He probably worked someplace else, but he was at WLAN. Then he came to WFEC, and then later on became a record executive for RCA. So
that's a big deal.
Yeah, you have lots of people. In present day DJs, you got DJ Puff, who opened for Rihanna and Keisha and Lil Wayne.
Yep.
And then if you just kind of run down names of broadcasters in the area, a lot of these names will bring fond memories and then maybe not so fond memories. I know many will remember Bruce Bond, who was a kingpin on WTPA. Well, no, Wink, but TPA radio became WNNK.
Okay. And
WNNK became a rather significant leader in radio listening, and they were the stations to beat. And when I was with Oldies 94.9, we had the glorious honor of knocking them off their pedestal. We were the #1 station for at least 1 rating book, maybe 2. But what's key to that is to note that there was a talent that is still in this market and doing very, very well, teamed up with a guy by the name of Todd Jeffers, Nancy Ryan. And Todd Jeffers were the morning show of Oldies 94.9.
Yep.
By that time, I was into sales. You had Bob Janis, who worked at WFEC. Bob Janis was a DJ who became a DJ. He became a district justice in this area.
That's awesome.
You had Ed Lincoln at WSBA, who had been there for years and years and years, had done dozens and dozens of record hops and featured lots of local bands at the time. Bob Janis's real name, by the way, is Bob Yannick. They do that often. I was never too smart to be able to change my own name.
You didn't have an air name
or
anything?
Actually, I did. When I was in college, I went by Billy Bash. But
that's a cool name.
Is neither here nor there. It's part of my middle name. So got away with that. And as I mentioned, Kurt Whitcomb, a guy by the name of Lucky Pierre, who went out to L.A., I believe it was, and was a huge, huge radio follower, I think at KCBQ. When I went to school in Texas for a brief period of time, I ran into a guy by the name of Dave Cockrell. May not be a too familiar name, but he went by Dave London at KCBQ in San Diego, and did a lot of national commercials for Eskimo Pie, for an example. But I met him, and it was through him when I was going to school in Texas. I didn't know what the heck I was going to do when I grew up. So talking to him, he said, Trousdale, I think you make a pretty good disc jockey. I guess that's all I needed. I just needed a little nudge in that direction.
Yeah.
And then,
hey, sometimes that's all it takes.
And started there. So I got out of Texas and then went up to Susquehanna University to get a degree in communications and theater. Back in '74, that's what they offered. They didn't have a separate curriculum at that time.
So it was both.
Yeah.
So you have to take theater classes and stuff like that?
Yeah. I directed a few plays, and
that's cool.
It was fun. It gave me the sense of stage presence. How am I doing?
You're doing great.
a lot of these DJs did dances at really notable and significant locations. Probably the biggest dances in Harrisburg proper was dances at the Progress Fire Hall. But you still had private clubs like the Mellabaloo. One of them was called the Raven. The Raven actually featured a lot of national artists. A guy by the name of Dick Phelan organized that. And you can go ahead and read some of the names off the back of that if you want.
Curtis Mayfield, The Impressions, Bailey Stewart, Anita Humes, The Essex, my eyes are terrible, Banana something.
Banana?
Barbara Mason, eyes are terrible. Ben E. King, Curtis Knight, The Squires with...
Curtis Knight, of course, was the predecessor of Jimi Hendrix, where he got his start.
Oh, my goodness. Gladys Knight, The Pipes, Cannibal.
Cannibal and the Headhunters.
Okay, yeah, it's cut off over there so I can see it.
So that was
quite a big name.
Yeah,
I mean, names there, I'd say. Yeah.
I mean, how do you get national acts to come to Harrisburg? You have a guy by the name of Dick Phelan who was smart enough to realize you bring them in on a Wednesday and Thursday night while they're traveling between Philadelphia and New York as a pickup gig. So before they get to the Howard Theater or they get to Uptown Theater, they're stopping in Harrisburg. Billy Stewart was a guy who played there often. The Legends, who have been inducted into the hall, and the Magmen were the house bands.
Okay,
at the Raven.
I forgot at the Raven. That's the place.
Right, the Raven.
Where's the Raven located?
The Raven was off of 441, kind of in back of where WITF is located.
Yep.
But they had it was like a castle and a drawbridge. As a matter of fact, some of the pictures of the emperors you'll see in a kind of a drawbridge setting. They're set up around the front of the Raven.
Okay.
And then there's the other DJ influences in Pittsburgh, like Porky Chedwick, a man near and dear to my heart because, as I mentioned to you, I'm kind of an inverted Oreo, white guy with black on the inside and white on the outside.
Yeah.
I'm a soul merchant. I can't help it. But Porky Chedwick and Terry Lee and Mad Mike were playing that stuff in Pittsburgh while we had, Blavid in Philadelphia. And then you got High Lit, Bob Horn, Dick Clark, Ed McMahon, Harvey Holiday, High Lit, Jocko. All these jocks are legendary. I would encourage people who are listening to look up the Philadelphia Pioneers, Broadcast Pioneers page.
Okay.
Because they acknowledge a lot of these phenomenal talents that are in the Philadelphia area. From those experiences, especially the playing at the Uptown Theater, the Magmen played there. You had Georgie Woods, who did the majority of the emceeing there, and he was with WDAS. But it was kind of right in the area of where Temple University is. So you had a lot of the Temple University students going there. And also the Howard and the Royal in Baltimore were also venues that these bands would play regularly. And then you also had other venues throughout the Commonwealth that were really hot spots, even back to the big band era. You had the Hershey Starlight Ballroom, the Valencia, Likens Ballroom, where the Jordan Brothers, they've played up there. I think they're nominated this year to be part of the hall. And then you had people that played with bands that maybe didn't stay in the area, but kind of went out and did their own thing. You got Denny Bruce out of Lancaster, who produced the Fabulous Thunderbirds, and Leo Kotke and John Hyatt, some of the groups.
John Hyatt.
Yeah.
I didn't know that. And
then you had John Orlowski, who is, he's written about 30 different books on production. And he cut his chops with producing groups, including The Who, Willie Nelson, Neil Young, Iron Maiden, the Ramones, Chicago.
He produced them?
Yeah. He produced a lot of their stuff.
Wow. Okay.
And from little old central Pennsylvania. He was with a group, and I don't remember right off the band that he was with. And I think it was kind of a short-lived group, as we do have them in some central Pennsylvania. Some of them do carry on and carry on and carry on like Pentagon.
Yeah. Great guys.
And they are, of course, retiring this year, and you are encouraged to stop by and get their tickets. I think their final shows are going to be at the West Shore Theater.
Yes, I think so.
And
as well.
they may be doing a gig with Vicky's Angels. Maybe. I'm not positive
I
about
can't
that.
remember totally myself either right now, but
And then you got Kearney Anderson, who was from Harrisburg. He was a John Harris graduate, and he was significant in a lot of the television production work, as well as a leading producer and a general manager of the majority of any significant R&B station in the United States. It started at DAS, and he went to Houston and L.A. and wherever there was a black audience to be found and needed to be built, he was there.
that's awesome.
And I think he ended his career at WDAS. And Hall & Oates, because they went to Temple. I don't know if you were aware of this. They played at the Uptown Theater as well.
No way.
And they got their start. They had a band before they were Hall & Oates. If Phil Schwartz were here, he'd tell me who that band was.
It's a shame he couldn't be here. I didn't know they had a band before that, though. That's
well, and that's part of the fun that Phil is. I mean, I learned that stuff from him.
yeah.
And
It's like a history book of music.
And when you find a record like that, when you go to a flea market and you find a record like that, it's like, wow. It's just, you've rediscovered a bit of history that is likely to get forgotten.
Yeah, of course.
As I mentioned, Phil is a wonderful fellow, and I strongly encourage you to get him here in this hot seat.
We definitely will.
And talk to him about some of the things he does. WHYY did a documentary on the Uptown Theater, which is something that is worth looking up in regard to the Chitlin Circuit and how that all kind of worked, and how the white guys, the magmen, went around on the Chitlin Circuit, which is basically the black circuit in all the black theaters in the United States. And then you had groups, some of them have been already recognized, but others that probably ought to be. You got Blitz Dinette, Elvis Davis Band, Hybrid Ice, Little Duck and the Drakes out of Columbia. Were a great 60s group. They're still playing, I think, but not with the original members. Pentagon, as we mentioned, Pixies 3 have been inducted.
Yep. Love them. They are, oh my gosh, we got to interview them. That was so much fun.
I was really fortunate when we were in York. We kind of resurrected their career, at least I like to think we did, because we were an oldie station then, and they were out of Hanover, and York's right down the road.
Yeah, 30 minutes.
We had several concerts with them at Oldies 96.1. Where they came together and they did their stuff, and that would have been in the 90s, maybe early 2000s.
That's really cool.
And then the Endells, the Emperors, the Furies, all these groups, the Legends, of course, and even the Molly Maguires, which brings up another little anecdote. I was fortunate enough to have hooked up with Dan Hartman's brother, Dave. And in talking to him, we started talking about, and Larry Sadler, and forgive me for not remembering all the names right now, talked to them about doing a benefit concert. I have a personal interest in cystic fibrosis. I had a sister who had cystic fibrosis. So we did a benefit concert featuring the Legends and another group called the Furies. And they're another group that is maybe didn't get a lot of national success, but they were on a Baltimore record label. And when you find their music, you should jump up and down and get excited and listen to it. It's really, really clean, fine stuff.
All right.
That's another reel-to-reel tape I want to get saved and resurrect the music of that.
We got to get you a tech guy.
That particular concert. Oh, yeah. Please.
Like get you a Hunter.
Yeah. And we talked a little bit and mentioned the fact about how Taylor Swift got her start. Started out by walking into a radio station in Reading, WEEU, and the disc jockeys there. I'm not positive about this, but I'm not positive. I have to double check. But a disc jockey who's still on the air in Carlisle may have worked there at that time and may have been the one who encouraged her a lot. Ray Thomas.
Oh, that name sounds really familiar.
And he's involved in HYL. And that was also spawned another disc jockey by the name of Ben Barber, who was significant in regard to the promoting of bands. And of the other radio stations, you had Paul Landersman. He was a managed disc jockey. He was the manager of the Quintones, who have been inducted.
Yep.
He also managed my partner, Kenny Chandler, for a while. He had a record label called PL. If you see that record, be sure to pick it up and jump up and down and get excited.
All right.
Also, some lesser-known groups that, the records are so-so. But, boy, when you talk about groups, you had the Royal Lancers out of Middletown, the Intentions out of the same area. And then you get a little bit more up-to-date. Got to check my notes here. You have, it's on the flip of this. The Susquehanna River Band, the Middleton Brothers, which I think were mentioned by our man's Mr. Frange.
Yep.
Legendary group out of Lancaster, the Crystal Airs, got their start at WLAN, because back then they had studios where you went in and you sang a song and you went on your way. So one of those recordings was put out on a record by Stan, the record man, at Stan's Record Bar in downtown Lancaster, and he pushed it. He also managed a group in the 60s called the Del Castro Sisters. So when you start looking at the nooks and crannies, you find all sorts of interesting information. As I mentioned, Stephen Foster, Camptown Races, 5 miles long, doo-dah.
We did talk about that.
Do you want to interject?
Yeah, so funny side story for myself. When I was a kid, I was obsessed with that song, Doo-dah. My mom used to sing it to me all the time, and I'd always ask her to sing it again. And, well, still to this day, my mom calls me Doo-dah sometimes. That was my nickname for a very long time as a child.
And once you start looking around in Canton, Pennsylvania, back in the late 1800s, it was one of the central staging areas for the circus. So circus music can be claimed in Pennsylvania as well. Barnum and Bailey wasn't the only circus in town. So that's one of the claims to fame to Canton, Pennsylvania.
It's crazy. I just kind of almost had this almost like epiphany. Like, we ask almost every episode. It's I got to find a better way to ask it. We ask like everyone what makes the music of Central Pennsylvania so special, at least the music community. What's different? What are we doing different here? Because we have something special here. I think you would agree. And I think we've never, we've gotten everybody's answers, but we don't know what is the answer, right? And I think you're kind of giving us a new aspect, a new outlook to that question. It's the history.
Yeah, there's so many spokes of the wheel.
Yeah.
There's the venues, there's the talent, there's the disc jockeys, there's the dances that were held by the disc jockeys. It's the bands that were promoted by the disc jockeys. It was the bands themselves. They were talented enough to get a gig in Philadelphia and get some national exposure.
Yep.
Like Hall & Oates.
Exactly.
There was a guy by the name of Pancho Villa, had a record label called PV. Phil has documented that label really, really well. And the groups that came out of Lancaster in particular on that label were phenomenal. Many of them are huge, what they call Northern Soul hits. In Harrisburg, you had the Soulville All-Stars, who had a song that did very, very well. And is now still being played in the Northern Soul dances.
That's amazing.
The Trinnells had a song that does very, very well. Don Hodgkin, who sang with the Emperors, has just re-released a song that is now doing very, very well in the Northern Soul. And that really is credit to Phil and Phil's connection with Don and getting him back in the studio and singing with the Ambassadors again.
Yeah.
And the list goes on, and that history leads to other musicians. The Ambassadors played with Dan Hartman, and Dan Hartman, of course, is very much Central Pennsylvania, West Shore, the Legends,
of course,
a Rock Hall member. And Don Hodgkins played in that same era, and he played with the legends. So if you want to get your YouTube going, just check out Northern Soul and the number of artists that are actually from Central Pennsylvania.
Oh, I'm sure it's astonishing.
It is. It is.
Oh, my goodness.
And
Well,
it's a continual education.
I can only imagine. And this entire thing has been insanely educating. I've learned a large amount from you here tonight. Oh my goodness,
There's more.
You're a history book. I'm sure there is, and we could probably talk about it all night long, huh?
Could be.
Well, I don't want to end things anything abruptly here, but I did want to just check with you, see if there's anything that you were promoting or anything like that you want to shout out before we wrap up here. We are running out of time here a little bit, but
no, I'd say it's just, I think, very important for people to realize the rich history there is in Central Pennsylvania.
Yes.
Brandon Valentine should be given a gold star, at least, if not more, for his efforts and energy in regard to creating what is the Central Pennsylvania Music Hall of Fame. It is the foundation from which the Pennsylvania Museum of Music and Broadcast History can grow from.
yes.
Which I feel like I'm the birthing father of that idea of taking it across Pennsylvania.
Okay.
But Brandon's work is the foundation from which that can happen.
Yes.
So we can get into the nooks and crannies of all the talents that are in Pennsylvania. Al Shade, of course, who was honored for his lifetime achievement at the last broadcast. I mean, there was a song that he wrote. He says, "I'm a star on WLBR." That's a station in Lebanon. So there's another broadcast talent
Reference.
connection that can be made. And then you got John Coltrane and Marian Anderson and Carl Tinley. I didn't even get into the gospel stuff. He's considered the American gospel music authority. And then Rosetta Tharpe, who was honored at the Rock and Roll Hall of Fame by Bonnie Raitt.
Okay.
And has influenced dozens and dozens and dozens of performers from Eric Clapton to Bruce Springsteen.
Oh my goodness.
So if you want a little bit more tidbit information, you can check out my friend Don Rooney, who did a podcast called Musical Inner Tube. Seems wrong, but it's right. He meant to say interlude, but it came out inner tube, and it stuck. So
I like it.
that is, I think, a fascinating program, and he gets into a lot of the nooks and crannies and a lot of musical history. So,
Okay. That's wonderful.
Yep.
Cool. Well, Bill, once again, man, thank you so much for your time tonight. It has been an absolute honor to have you here, and thank you for going through your knowledge with us and, showing us all the history of Pennsylvania.
Not even close.
We got to have you back on to cover some more. That's for certain.
The next time we'll do it with music.
I'm down with that. We'll do a long form thing or something like that.
Yeah. We'll do, we'll name the artist and play some of their stuff. And
I would love that because you certainly named a few people out there where I'm like, man, you can't put a name to a face. It's like I know that name. Can't think of the song. Couldn't even guess. But yeah, you definitely touched a lot on that there. But yeah, like I said, man, thanks again so much for coming on the show. We really appreciate you.
Well, thank you.
Spending the evening with us.
Thank you for having me.
Of course. We'll see you around.
Okay.
Alrighty. That was a great conversation with Bill. Got to learn all about the history of Central Pennsylvania from all different sides of the music industry. Coming up next, we have Nate Myers. Now we're here with Nate Myers. You might also know him from Nate Myers and the Aces. Been performing music for about 21 years now. Nate, thank you so much for coming out and being on the show tonight.
Thanks for having me, man. I appreciate it.
Of course. So let's start at the beginning, man. You've been playing music 21 years now. I'm sure it goes back a little bit before then even. Where did this all begin?
So yeah, me playing under my own name started about the last 21 years, but I got into it way before. My dad turned 40 back in, I don't know. I was 92. I think it was 92. And he just happened, he threw a party, and this Delta Blues guitar player showed up that I had never met, and I don't know if he had ever met him. And he was like playing solo Robert Johnson stuff and old vintage Muddy Waters and just really cool stuff. So the party was over. Weeks later, I'm downtown doing laundry, and I just happened to run into this dude, and he said, "Why don't you come back to my place and I'll play some records for you?" I'd never seen anything like that. It like blew my mind. I never heard Delta Blues before, never heard any of that stuff. So he brought me back to his spot, and he said, "Well, look, I got this old harmonica." I said, "Well, I really wanted to play the guitar, but I didn't have any money. I was just fresh out of high school." So he laid this old harp on me, and that was the beginning of it. And I would go to his house, and he would play Robert Johnson stuff, and he nailed it, like lick for lick, like the record, amazing. And then I'd play harp behind it, and we'd listen to records all the time, back and forth. And it was really like an apprenticeship, you know. He would drink, and I would hang out, and we would just play music. And so that's how I got into this whole thing, man.
That's awesome.
Yeah, it's old school. It's like it doesn't happen anymore.
No, you don't get stories like that anymore.
Yeah.
Like, man, that's cool. So you started out playing the harmonica before the guitar then?
Yep. The guitar thing I noodled with, like, mostly around COVID. We started messing around with it. So I've been working on it, and I'm terrible at it, but I'm trying to develop a new skill set. So, like, it's helped us out a little bit, and it's been really embarrassing because I'm like, oh man, I thought this was a lot easier than it turned out to be. I've had to eat humble pie on it all the time, so I'm like, but I keep working on it. So yeah. No,
that's really cool though. I mean, yeah, that's kind of how it goes with every instrument. Everything always looks easier too. I mean, I played music on and off my entire life, and I'm always just like, oh yeah, I can. It's just like riding a bike. I'll pick up the guitar and I'll go right back to shredding. Does not happen like that, man.
No, no, man. I've had to apologize, man. I'm like, oh, that looked easier than I thought it was. You know, I'm learning my lessons, man. So
yeah, no, I hear that, man. I mean, even back to the harmonica, even I've tried picking it up before. When I was a kid, my dad played the harmonica, and we would go to church on Sundays, and we had this. He had this single cab stick shift Ford Ranger, right? I'd ride with him, and my brothers and sisters were out with my mom in the minivan, right? And we'd be driving back from church, and he'd be like, all right, you shift, I'm going to play the harmonica. So he'd be steering with his knee, playing the harmonica with both hands, and I'm shifting the truck for him. And man, it's a core memory for me. I love it, you know?
Right on, man.
But I've always wanted to learn the harmonica, and I can't get it down. I tried to get my dad to teach me. Did not go well.
But you tried. That's the thing.
Hey, man, exactly. There's still more time for me to try, too.
You're young, man.
Yeah, exactly. I got time, you know. But so let's talk a little bit more about your music, though. So you're kind of bluesy, soul-y, you know, got this New Orleans vibes to you a little bit, kind of. Where did you get that passion from? What made you start playing that kind of music?
So what had happened was so when I first started coming up, like, we were literally listening to nothing but 1920s, 1930s Delta style blues. So Muddy and Charlie Patton and you know, Josh White, who's not really there, but we listened to John Hurt and all kinds of like vintage stuff. And that always struck me as real music, the realest of real music. And I'm embarrassed to say this, I was a snob. So I was into it, and that's all I was into for years and years and years and years. And so in 2000, I moved down to Harrisburg. I kind of got recruited by this band called Krypton City Blues Review. Their harmonica player, they parted ways or whatever. Okay. And they said, would you come down? And I quit my job. I, you know, moved out of my apartment, and I moved down here cold. Like, I didn't have a job. I ended up finding an apartment. I found a job, and I came here to play music. So that's what I came to do. And we got into like the 1950s, like Electric Muddy Waters and Howlin' Wolf and all that stuff, and I was deep into that. Okay. And then that's all I wanted to play then. And then
you guys were doing covers of that stuff.
Yeah, like, and the band was like, I'm a little biased on it, but like the band was one of the best for that stuff. Like the front man Mitch Ivanoff, he sounded like Muddy. His slide playing was righteous. Everybody in that unit at that time was in it, and we all listened to it, and we all loved it. And so in 2004, I think it was 2004, we got invited down to Clarksdale to record with one of their guitar players down that way, and we made a record with Big Jack Johnson down there. And when I came home, wow, it kind of flipped our head. I know, you know, Pete was on screen, he'd say the same thing. Like, it flipped our heads around because there's a lot of stuff going on down there. And one of the things that he told us was that everybody in the Delta listened to the Grand Ole Opry. So now we got this country thing, and we're sort of like, I'm stewing on it, and I'm like, yeah, I'm seeing how this works. So now I'm getting into country, you know, I'm getting into like the other rootsy styles, and I know, yeah, and I my opinion, it's just my opinion, it's all like it's a wheel with a hub, and that hub is country, and it's blues, and it's, you know, it's roots music, and then we got rock and roll and all these other things that come off it. But to me, I would even say rap music is in there too, man. Yeah, I agree. I think the stories are solid. I'm an old school rap guy, so that finds its way into stuff. But like, I think all that stuff relates, and you know, when we say, well, it's this or it's that, you know, you listen to you listen to some of these blues guys and they're playing country style stuff, or you listen to some of these old rock guys and they're playing it all, country and blues, and they're putting their own spin on it. And so I'm coming backwards. I'm coming from the Delta stuff into like playing some Zeppelin style stuff and some Rolling Stones style stuff, and then getting into the hip hop thing. So I've kind of come backwards. I should have started out here and gone in, but I started in there and came out. So
Gotcha.
That's just the way it is, man.
Hey, man, it seems like it's working for you, though.
Yeah, man. I mean, we're paying the bills, so mostly.
And that's all that matters, though, right?
Yeah,
Keep the lights
yeah.
on and keep the music going. So
Yes.
that's good, man. Man, that's awesome. And it's cool how you use that analogy about the wheel with it too, with the blues and the rock, the even, would you say jazz even a little bit?
I say it's all in there, man.
Yeah. Yeah, that's cool. And even you made your comment about rap. Honestly, like you said, telling stories, like rap has some great ballads to it even, People don't look at it that way, but as a musician, like, people outside of the music industry don't look at it that way, but as a musician, you're like, wow, man, they can write some great stories in there too.
They sure can.
Which is amazing. So now you've been playing around for a while. You got a new EP in the works, you were saying?
Yeah, we're doing like a little blue. We're doing like a throwback blues record, man. We were talking about it, and I said, let's see if we can do a blues record, something to sell during festival season. And so hopefully we got 4 tunes in the can right now. They're mostly all there. We just got to do a couple little touch-up things, and then they'll be ready to rock and roll. So
Rome wasn't built in a day.
That's right.
So how long were you with that band then? And then I guess you were with that band whenever you moved down to Harrisburg.
Yeah, it was about 4 years, and I was writing more original stuff, and at that time it was a risk, man. I was afraid I would never play again, and I mean I had a lot of anxiety about it, and I thought, I hope this thing works. And by God's grace, and only by God's grace, and the dedication of the guys involved, we played a lot, and I've been able to establish my own name. So that's a blessing, man.
Of course. What was it like going out on your own? I mean, I'm sure it was a little intimidating.
Yeah, it was scary because I was going from a product where everybody loved it, and rightfully so. It was a good product, rocking product, to my own thing, which was kind of like an unknown quantity, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
so,
you're going to a crowd that you're going from performing to a crowd that knows what they're going to hear. Now you're performing in front of a crowd that they don't know what they're going to hear.
Yeah,
they have that uncertainty.
Yeah,
which is, I mean, I see what you mean now, but you kind of did it backwards. You had to kind of cut your teeth second almost.
Yeah, man. And I tell you what, I mean, I'm not embarrassed to say this. I went through some depression over it, some anxiety. I was scared, man. I was super scared. And my ex-wife at the time, we were still married, it kind of made her crazy. Not that I was doing anything crazy, but it was really like, this is risky for me. I want to play music. We all want to be a success, right? Like, no matter what. Any musician who says they don't want to be a success is they're probably lying about it. We need it. We need that. That rub from people. Nobody wants to just play in their, well, I don't know, maybe, but nobody I know wants to play in their basement. They need that applause. They need that approval. Like, I'm not saying that's right, but we need it. Like.
That's why you do what you do, man.
Kinda, sorta, yeah. Kinda, sorta, yeah.
Like, you want that, you want to be told that you're good at what you're doing. That's why you practice. That's why you work at it. It's like take it to sports. Athletes. Nobody does football practice every day and doesn't try to get into college and play for college or the NFL, like even the high school team. It's you're working towards a goal.
Yep.
You want that recognition. You work for it. You earn it.
Yeah. And art's funny because it's subjective. Like what you like, I may not like. If you looked at my record collection, I look at your record collection, I'd say, well, I'm not into this. And you may say, what is this weird stuff he's listening to? I'm not into that either. But like, everybody's got their, I'm learning that everybody's got their niche. So no matter what you're into, there's going to be somebody who likes it if they can hear it. So, but it's a scary thing, man. You can't it's not like eating a hamburger, you get, oh, this is the best hamburger I ever had. Like, everybody listens to what record, and 10 of us may say, this is the greatest thing I ever heard, and 10 of us may say, I don't ever want to hear that again. So it's just kind of mushy. The arts are kind of mushy that way.
They are, and it's evolving right now too. I think a kind of a cool thing, a neat thing that's going on right now in the arts is that even with music, like you're saying, I could look at your collection, you could look at my collection and go, oh, I don't like this, we don't like that. But a lot of people right now are at least starting to realize talent. There are a lot of bands out there that are big name national acts that, man, I could never hear their music again and be totally happy. But I don't think that they're a terrible band. They're extremely talented artists, way more talented than I will ever be. But hey, it's okay. I mean, some people just don't like everything, and that's all right. But
that's right.
I think right now there's a lot of people like I said, explain how I just explained that, hey, yeah, maybe I don't like that band, but they're still extremely talented artists. And if you're my friend, I'm coming out to support you. That's for sure. That's the most important thing. So what was it like coming from Sealands Grove down to Harrisburg playing music?
Man, I'll say this, and I was like the country mouse, man. Like, I got down here and I thought, I don't know. I was staying on City Island one time, and I was looking across to the Harrisburg side, and I was feeling kind of funky when I first moved here. I thought, I'm not going to make it here. And I thought a lot about moving home. Not that Harrisburg is like the most giant city, but I wasn't used to it, man. I wasn't used to the hustle and bustle and different kind of women down here. Good kind of women. My kind of women, but like I wasn't used to all that. So I thought about going home, and my first girlfriend was really good, and she kind of showed me around the city, and I got used to driving in the city. And once I discovered all the great eateries around here, like I was like, dude, this is my spot now, But it took me a couple years to get there, so because I just wasn't used to it, and and I was. I'm backwards, man. I'm a lot backwards. So, but I've learned a lot. I mean, I've been here 24 years now, so I think I got a handle on it mostly. But yeah, man,
it's a good area, man. I mean, I understand that. I grew up in the country in the middle of nowhere, and not saying Sealands Grove is, but moving up to Harrisburg, it was life changing for me. It's a little intimidating at first, but you're right. There's a lot of different good stuff to it, man. A whole lot.
A lot of art, man. A lot of beautiful art in the buildings. The architecture, the history. I mean, he was talking about history. Bill was, and we got a lot of cool history around Harrisburg, and and we're close to Philly, and we're close to Baltimore, and we're close to New York City, and so in York and Lancaster, a lot of great spots to get to from here. So
yeah. Speaking of great spots, what are some of your favorite places that you played at over the years?
It's not what you think, right? So like we used to play this place called the Blue Front Lounge in Steelton, which was like a little hole in the wall with a great soul food.
Okay. We
were in there every Tuesday. We were playing for tips, and it was amazing. We had a great time because people would come in off the street. You'd never know. We played the Grotto Pub for 10 years every Tuesday, and people would come in off the street. The food was great. So that's the kind of stuff I dig. We've had some great big openers and some more regional type of stuff, and that stuff's always been fun. But it's the mom and pop gigs I like the best, where we can talk to people and in a listening room situation and get a little rowdy and maybe have a little drinky poo or whatever, It's a lot of fun, man,
Interact, have that intimacy with the crowd.
Yeah, I like it. I'm a talker, so I could talk all night.
Hey, man, me too. That's why we're both here right now.
That's right, man.
That's awesome. Now, we gotta mention this because we talked about it off air. You said before you became a musician, you thought you were going to be a professional skateboarder.
Dude, yeah, it's funny. That's all I wanted to do. When I was in high school, like, that's when Vision Streetwear first started coming out, and all that stuff came out, and like Gator and Gons and all those, Rodney Mullen and all those dudes, and that's really what I wanted to do. And I, unfortunately, as I told you, I didn't have a knack for it, man. I did some street skating, I could ollie grade and kick flips and all this stuff, and we spent my brothers and I spent a lot of time skating. We had a vert ramp at our house. And I loved it, man. And then it dawned on me, I'm like, this ain't going to happen. But I still had a lot of fun. I used to come down here. We would skip school sometimes and come down to go to Funtastic in Mechanicsburg, man. We'd run down here to get skateboards and stuff. So it was pretty cool, man. So, yeah, the skate culture is a big part of my life, man. Still, my brother gave me what did he give me for my birthday? He gave me a Steve Caballero deck for my birthay. So and I just turned 50 3 weeks ago. So I'm still into it, man.
Yeah, that's awesome. You ever get on the board once in a while now?
Yeah, I bought one like 2 years ago last year, and I got out a little bit, and I thought, dude, I'm gonna bust my head. I can't do anything anymore, but it was still fun, man.
Dude, I know it's scary. I last time I got one was probably about 2 years ago myself, and I was like, actually, that's like an actual skateboard. Have you tried longboarding?
I haven't, but it looks intriguing, man. I kind of like I see they got these motorized longboards now too, and
that's too scary.
I think it'd be kind of fun to mess around with, man.
I don't know. It's like, I mean, obviously there's a kind of like a rivalry between the street boarders and the longboarders and stuff like that. But like, it's almost more like snowboarding where you're carving and stuff like that, which is fun. And then you have the crazy people like Cole Trotta that like do like the drifting stuff, which going like 40 miles an hour, bombing it down like switchbacks.
Amazing, right? Nerves of steel with that stuff.
Oh my
That's not me. I'm timid, man.
I am the same way. Has the skateboarding life had any influence on your music at all, though?
It's one of the things that we used to listen to, like the Descendants and Sex Pistols and Misfits and all that jazz when we would skate. So like to me, coming backwards to it, it hasn't had a ton of influence. What's really influenced me more has been the art of it all, like the skateboard art and stickers everywhere. I put them everywhere, man. I love them. And just that culture of like just doing your thing. That's when I find, for a long time I tried to be somebody else. I wanted to be Little Walter. I wanted to be these other harmonica players that I enjoyed. And Pete and I talked, and he said, why don't you just try being yourself? And I've had a lot more peace in my life since then. I'm never going to be them dudes. Like, I'm the only one of me that's going to be here, and they're the only one of them that's going to be here. So I've had a lot more peace when I just do what I do. Some people like what I do. Some people don't like it. I wish everybody liked it, but, at least I know I'm doing what I do. So.
Oh, man, that's awesome. When did you figure that out?
I'm embarrassed to tell you this. You really want to know, man? Like,
you don't got to tell us.
Probably 6 years ago.
Hey, man, there's something wrong.
Like probably 6 or 7 years ago, and I should have known it before then. But I wanted to be somebody else for a long time, and I still have to catch myself sometimes. Like, this is not Stevie Ray Vaughan. This is Nate Myers. So I got to, I know who I am now mostly, and I'm working it out still.
No, that's awesome though, because you said it brings you more at peace.
Yeah,
and that's important. I mean, there can't be two Stevie Ray Vaughns.
There's only one.
There's only one Stevie Ray Vaughan, and I think that does it kind of make you feel like you have something more to work towards. Then kind of give yourself a goal to be a peer, not necessarily. Oh yeah, I guess kind of be more of a counterpart to them than a peer.
Yeah, I try to take whatever I can grab from them, and I put what I can into my music, and then I just kind of try to do what I do. And like, you can tell that those guys influence me and those gals influence me, but like I just do what I do. So like it really doesn't matter. Yeah. Stevie Ray came and he was amazing, and Hendrix came and he was amazing, and Joe Pass came and he was amazing, and whoever, Rosetta Tharpe came and she was amazing. Like, yep. And I just do what I do, and I'm getting to be at peace with that. Would I like to have some big success? Yeah, everybody would, man. I want to buy a Corvette someday, man.
Hell yeah, man.
But what? If it doesn't happen, it doesn't happen. I get to eat a lot of good food and meet nice people, and we play our music, and that's cool.
Dude, that's what it's all about, man. I'm sure you're on the path to great success, man. I mean, it sounds like you're tuning into yourself, and that's phenomenal. You're just working so hard at it. Got new music coming out.
When we get to play some nice shows, man. We played, did some stuff with Martini Brothers recently, which was cool, and
nice.
Did some stuff with A Very Fine Gentleman, which is cool, and we're going to be doing this tribute show, this Last Waltz tribute show the night before Thanksgiving. So we're involved in that with a Mighty River Band and a bunch of other guys. We're going to be doing that. So it's nice to be part of this community, because I came in as an outsider and I didn't really fit in too good at first, but now I feel like I'm getting some good friends and having some real nice opportunities. So
I'd say you're one of us now, man. I mean, come on.
One of us. I'm down.
Dude, that's awesome, man. Well, dude, thank you so much for coming on the show, dude. I greatly
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it, man.
Yeah, man. Is there anything else maybe we're not covering that we wanted me to?
I think it's important to support the arts, man, whatever they are. If you're into painting and whatever, support the arts, man, and make sure you support live music. And it's buku important. Whether it's me or any of the other fine artists you bring on here, is good to get people out, So that's really all I got to say, man.
I think you hit it right on the head there, though, so that's phenomenal.
All right.
Dude, thank you so much again. It was great having you here.
Thank you. Keep up the good work, y'all.
Hey, thank you so much, and stay tuned for a live performance.
This little blues we wrote called "Loving You, Girl" is the right thing for me. 1, 2, 3, 4. I said loving you is the right thing for me. Yes, it is. I said loving you is the right thing for me. Oh, baby, I used to doubt it, but I thought about it. Girl, there ain't nobody quite like you. I said loving you is the right thing for me. Well, the last woman I loved almost drove me right out of my mind. Yes, she did. Well, the last woman I loved almost drove me right out of my mind. Oh, baby, all my friends said, you better watch your step, because you just got yourself out of a terrible mess. But I know that love is loving you is the right thing for me. Well, the first time I met you, baby, was in some down-home old country bar. Yes, it was. Well, the first time I met you, baby, was in some down-home old country bar. Oh, baby, 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 I must say, I knew right away that you'd be my one and only someday. But I know that loving you is the right thing for me. Yeah, yeah. I say loving you is the right thing for me. Yes, it is. I say loving you is the right thing for me. Oh, baby, 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 I used to doubt it, but I thought about it. Girl, there ain't nobody quite like you. I say loving you is the right thing for me. Yeah, I say loving you is the right thing for me. Yes, it is. I say loving you is the right thing for me. Oh, baby, 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 I used to doubt it, but I thought about it. Girl, there ain't nobody quite like you. I say loving you is the right thing for me. Yeah, yeah. I say loving you is the right thing for me.
It was great getting to know Nate a little bit better. Also, that live performance was out of this world. Everyone, thank you so much for tuning in. Huge shout out to Bill and Nate for joining us this evening, and we'll see you next time.